Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. Today, we're going to talk for a little bit about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, if you're an NBA fan, you know who he is, you know how good he is, and you might also know how kind of down last season was for him. In 2020, he, alongside LeBron James, won the Lakers a championship. He was one of the best players in the world, and a lot of publications, I believe it was ESPN, had him listed as potentially the second best player in the world coming into this past season. That's really high praise. And unfortunately, he didn't quite meet that threshold, and it was kind of a season that was all around disappointing for Anthony Davis. Mainly, he was very injury plagued. He only played around 35 games in a 72 game season, so right around half of his games, which he has always had problems staying on the court, but he's never quite played that low number of games. He was also inconsistent when he was on the court. He had a career low in field goal percentage. It was his lowest points per game since his second season in the league, and he had a 7% drop in his three-point percentage. Why? Part of that is those injuries. They were just kind of persisting, and he wasn't really able to stay on the court for too long without dealing with some kind of injury, and that ultimately kind of takes you out of your rhythm and prevents you from really getting in the groove of the season and finding the rhythm that he needs to get into to be as efficient as he typically is. And in addition, it was just a really short offseason for Anthony Davis and the Lakers as a whole. They had one of the shortest, I believe it might have even been the shortest offseason in NBA history. They didn't have a lot of turnaround from winning a championship to having to go for another one. It was a really tough season, and between those things and just not hitting the shots he typically hits, it was a disappointing season for Anthony Davis. So, why going into this next season do I think Anthony Davis is going to have a big year? I personally think Anthony Davis is in for a season that could have him in MVP conversations. And it's for a number of factors, but one of the main things is the biggest addition that the Lakers made this offseason, maybe even the biggest addition that any team made this offseason, Russell Westbrook. Adding Russell Westbrook to their core is going to help Anthony Davis so much and improve his game, open up options for him, and just make life so much easier for him. Why? Let's start with the fact that Russ kind of just makes his teammates better. A lot of people don't want to admit this because a lot of people try and push the narrative that Russ makes his teammates worse or that Russ doesn't care about his teammates. Let's go through a few examples. KD's won an MVP one time with Russell Westbrook. Paul George's best season of his career, where he was a Defensive Player of the Year and MVP candidate, came with Russell Westbrook. Just this past season, Bradley Beal had the best season of his career and was second in the league in scoring alongside Russell Westbrook. Russ just led the league in assists. Russ helps his teammates a lot, and his playmaking is the key thing that's going to get AD a lot of easier shots. When we look back in Anthony Davis's career, his top scoring season was in 2017 when he scored 28.1 points per game. Nearly 30 points per game, that's crazy good. And one of the big reasons for that was because he had two great facilitators in Rajon Rondo and Jrue Holiday, who both averaged around 7-8 assists. That is a lot of playmaking on one roster. And now that you have Russell Westbrook, this past season's league leader in assists, as well as LeBron James, an all-time great playmaker and someone who is really committed to getting better on that end of the ball as his career kind of just winds down, he's become a better playmaker. AD has a ton of playmaking around him to get him easier shots. A lot of times, Anthony Davis this past season and over the course of his career has had to create for himself. But when he has been given those great playmakers, he makes the most out of it because he takes those high efficiency opportunities that he's going to get from the playmaking, the attacking of Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, and he turns those high efficiency opportunities into points. He puts them on the board. It's very rare when AD gets a wide open look that he doesn't convert. This past season, he had to do a lot less of that because not only did LeBron James miss some time, which led to not a lot of playmaking, the roster itself didn't have a lot of great playmaking. They actually had Rondo just the season before, and this past year, Dennis Schroeder wasn't a great playmaker. It just wasn't a good fit with him as their starting point guard. So now with Russell Westbrook, he's going to have to create less for himself, which also leads to the fact that he's going to have to do less banging down low. He's going to have to go less so into the post, and I think he's going to get a lot more driving kick opportunities, pick and roll opportunities, which we'll talk about in a second, and that could also prevent some of the wear and tear that he experienced this past season, as well as just having an all-around longer offseason should hopefully lead to him being healthier. And like I just mentioned, the pick and roll between Russ and AD is going to be super dangerous because you have a big question. Do you guard Russ rolling to the rim, who is very athletic, probably the most athletic point guard we've ever seen, and also still very quick despite being a little bit older, less athletic than he once was? But for Russ, that really doesn't mean that much. Or do you go after Anthony Davis, who is one of the most dominant big men that we've seen in recent memory, and he can just either dunk on you, he can pull up from mid-range, he can pick and pop as well. Or if you guard him, then Russ can shoot the mid-range, which he has proven to be very good at over the course of his career. There's so many different options that they can go with, and not only that, but they can run some sets where they run a pick and roll with Russ and AD, and as they run that, LeBron cuts in off the wing, and then you have another guy that you have to worry about, potentially the greatest player of all time, diving at the rim as well. It is so hard to guard that trio, and even just that duo of Russ and AD with LeBron lingering. It is going to be a nightmare for teams to stop them, and so AD is going to get a lot more opportunities to score and a lot more efficient and more open opportunities in general. Alongside of that, the team construction for this upcoming season is much improved. What they really needed to do this offseason was add shooters, and that's exactly what the Lakers did. They added guys like Carmelo Anthony, Malik Monk, who had a really underrated season, Kendrick Nunn, who had an underrated shooting season, Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington. These are players that can hit their threes. They might not be the greatest shooters in the world, but if you give them open threes, those guys are more often than not going to knock them down. And it makes it a lot more difficult to double team or even focus on Anthony Davis when you have those shooters around him. And now that they have them, it's going to open up his game a lot more and prevent those double teams that can lead to AD either taking a bad shot or just leading to kind of a stagnant offense. I think it's going to be a lot similar to the Joel Embiid situation. Over the past offseason, Daryl Morey came in and put some shooters around Joel Embiid. He added a Seth Curry in there, who is a phenomenal shooter. It really helped improve the team. Tyrese Maxey proved to be a better shooter. Brought in Danny Green, a guy who was on the Lakers team that helped them win a championship just a couple seasons ago. He added shooters around Joel Embiid, which allowed him to avoid more double teams, and Embiid as well improved in his playmaking, his ability to pass out of those double teams, which made it even more dangerous and led to more team success. If Anthony Davis is able to have a similar effect, where the effect of those shooters leads to less double teams, and he becomes better at himself passing out of those double teams, it's going to be impossible for teams to really commit to that scheme and give him a lot more opportunities to just go one-on-one, most of the time with potentially a smaller defender, or if it's a larger defender, someone who's just not quite as quick as him. And that is kind of where we get to the fact that it seems as well that Anthony Davis is going to make the switch to the center position, which is something that I've been advocating for a while now, because the Lakers have always kind of had a hole there. They've had Marc Gasol, given he was a decent player. He's just older now, and he isn't quite as effective as he once was. He is now no longer on the team, but over the course of this past season, a lot of times he was their best option. They brought in Andre Drummond, who really just didn't fit. Dwight Howard the season before was solid, but wasn't quite the greatest fit either. With AD at the center, it's going to open up a lot more lineup possibilities and possibilities to create teams that are just harder to guard. LeBron is probably going to play the 4, I would assume, with the personnel that they're going to have out there, and just him playing center, it's going to be really hard for centers to keep up with him. He is a lot quicker and a lot more adept on the perimeter and at handling the ball than most centers are typically used to. It's going to be really difficult to guard him. You either commit to putting a smaller defender on him, or you put that center out there and they might just get cooked. It's going to also help create more opportunities for his teammates in the paint by keeping the big on the perimeter, because you have to guard him. You're not going to leave Anthony Davis wide open for threes, and so if the big starts to shade off and AD sits in the corner or even sits on the wing or at the top of the key, then he could get a lot more wide open 3 opportunities if the big shades off, or if he plays on, it's just going to help his team get better because of how dangerous he can be. This could lead to a lot of driving kicks where when you have Russell Westbrook and LeBron James, if you don't have someone close to the rim, then you're just going to get cooked, and they're going to score a million points in the paint. So you've got to commit at least a little bit, meaning that the defender is going to shade off and AD is just going to shoot that wide open 3 right over the closeout defender and knock it down a lot of the time. With AD playing the center, like I said, it makes them more difficult to guard because they can also add more shooting in the lineup. Those centers that I've mentioned, Marc Gasol, while once a good 3-point shooter, kind of became a little bit inconsistent. Andre Drummond, not a shooter. Dwight Howard, not much of a shooter either. And if you have AD at that starting center position, you could put a lineup out there with Russ, LeBron, AD, and then a couple of shooters, which allows you to get more out there. If AD played the power forward and you start like a Dwight Howard at center, quickly your spacing becomes very mediocre, with Russ not being a great shooter, LeBron being a decent shooter but nothing exceptional, and AD, like I said, had a down year shooting. He's never been a phenomenal shooter. He's been good at times. For example, this past playoff run, you need to have more shooting out there than that, because when you look at the center position and you have Dwight Howard out there, just can't shoot. So having the ability to put more shooters in the lineup makes a lot of these things that I've mentioned even more possible and makes them more difficult to guard. Like I said, once again, giving Anthony Davis more wide open opportunities. So all of that, all those words basically to say, I think AD's in for a career year. He might not hit that 28 point per game scoring total that I mentioned previously for his career high, but I think he is going to have a phenomenal season in terms of efficiency. He's going to be a great defensive player again. I think he's going to be healthier, and I think this shift to center and the just all around the moves that the Lakers have made have opened up his game so much more. I'm excited to see what he does this season. I think he's going to reestablish himself as a unanimous top 10 player in the league, and I think a lot of people forgot just how good AD is because of this down year. I don't think that this is the new normal for Anthony Davis. I think we're going to see a lot more of the AD we know in the past, and I think this year's iteration of Anthony Davis will be one of the best, if not the best, that we've ever seen, leading the Lakers to potentially another NBA championship. Let me know what you think about everything I said in this video in the comment section below. I appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later. Real One Say Back.